SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
When banking starts to feel less personal, you know where to find us. Community Bank. Deep roots, local people, personal banking. Visit communitybank.net. Member FDIC.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive. But now I'm a man, way past 21.
Good morning, and welcome to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Today is July 29th, 2026. I'm Richard Cross. I'm obviously not in the studio. It's pitch black behind me. Been on a family vacation this week. I've been away, but I wanted to be with all of you for a little while this morning. Yeah, sometimes we talk about our radio family, which can mean so many things, can mean different things to different people, but it's about the relationships that we build through our communication, through our voices, through the messages that we send, through our beliefs. And I think the best thing about family, whether it is a radio family or you're talking about a biological family, is that family is always there. Family is there to celebrate the highest of highs, the successes, the ones that happen in life, that happen in our activities, that happen in athletics, that happen within our churches. It's always there to celebrate. Family's there for the mundane, just the day-to-day, the stuff that never changes, the stuff that feels incredibly routine. And then family is there for the hard times, when you need a shoulder to cry on, when you need someone to wrap their arms around you and sometimes not say a word. And today is one of the hard times. It is with a tremendous amount of sadness this morning that I share with you something that some of you may know already, may have heard already. And that is that Lance Tolbert has died. Lance passed away on Monday evening. He was at home. He might have been doing the mundane, at least the way that some would describe it. The truth of the matter is, Lance was doing what he loved on Monday night. After he left work on Monday, he went by and he saw his dad, visited with him for a while, went and saw his mom, was working in the yard, and would have had on Tuesday morning some of the stories that he and I share on a daily basis of, well, what'd you get done in the yard? Did you trim the hedges? Did you mow the grass? Did you weed eat? And we would have talked about how hot it was. And after he finished mowing the grass, he went and sat in his chair that he always sits in, perhaps with a cold pop in hand to celebrate the fruit of his labor. And his dogs were right there with him. And he was tossing the ball with his dogs. And Lance died. There is no evidence that there was any struggle or any pain. People close to Lance have shared with us that while they're not going to have an autopsy and may never exactly have an answer, the belief is that he died of a massive heart attack and went very, very peacefully. So who was Lance Tolbert? I mean, there's the job, or in Lance's case, jobs. He was a radio producer. He was my radio producer. For about the last 22 months, as we've gone through a pretty significant amount of change at SuperTalk Mississippi, Lance and I have been side by side. And while he was a producer, he was a whole lot more. There was a time or two where he was an alarm clock for me. Thank you for that, Lance. There was a time or two where I was an alarm clock for him, and all of that left Willie scrambling. And yet, with, I think, one exception, we always made it at 6:06 a.m. Lance was a son. I mentioned his dad and his mom. You have heard Lance talk about his parents so many times. And in his voice, you could hear the clear love, the adoration that he had for both of them, for what they meant to him. Lance was an uncle. His sister Brandy had children that he absolutely adored. And he especially loved celebrating those moments with him. Lance was a brother and a brother-in-law. I talked to Ryan Buckvich yesterday. Ryan is Lance's brother-in-law, and I said to Ryan, I hope you know how much Lance thought of you. He thought the world of you. And Ryan, to his credit, said, I do. He said, Lance thought more of me than maybe anybody else on earth. He said, which probably means we should question his judgment. But Lance was the kind of guy that if he cared about you, he let you know that he cared about you. He adored his sister. He just absolutely adored his sister. He viewed himself as her protector. And maybe that was more necessary in ninth grade than it is at 51. But that was not an age thing. That was, in a lot of ways, the love of his life, his baby sister. And Lance was a friend. And many of you that are listening right now can say, hey, Lance was my friend. Because he had the ability to make everyone that he came in contact with feel like a friend. He was naturally curious. He was incredibly loyal. Had a conversation last night with one of his baseball teammates from the time that he was at Ole Miss. And he said to me that, Lance and I weren't that close, but we were teammates. There's that special bond. And he said, one of the things that you knew is if Lance was on your team, he had your back. He was there. He was with you in the fight. He was an incredible competitor. But this teammate of his said to me, other than text, talk to him from time to time. If I called Lance right now and said, Lance, I'm off the road on a ditch in Winona, he'd jump in the FJ and he'd be on the way. And he'd have chains, and if he needed more help than that, he'd bring it too. That's who Lance Tolbert was. Lance is truly, and I don't throw this around lightly, truly one of the most interesting people that I've ever been around. His career timeline is wildly fascinating. He has worked as a fundraiser at the University of Mississippi Foundation. He's worked in the stock market business, stocks and bonds and trading. He has been a bartender for the last half dozen years or so. He's worked with us at SuperTalk Mississippi. And he truly and genuinely cared about his work. He loved what he was doing. But all of those varied experiences, coupled with a person that was naturally curious, wanted to know more, wanted answers. He never stopped researching. He never stopped digging. And I am here to tell you, if you need proof of that, I suppose, though I would never do it, I could let you peek into the text message chain that exists between Lance and me. There was a whole lot more texting from Lance than there was for me. He was always eager to share the newest video that he was convinced I was just finally going to watch, that he had found on YouTube off in some rabbit hole. Or a comparison of GDPs of developing countries, or why BRICS was a real threat to the economic system in the United States. It just went on and on and on. Today we're going to try to celebrate Lance. We're going to remember him as well. I'll be joined by Lucian and Will on the other side of this timeout. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi. God bless the family and the friends of Lance Tolbert.
Back to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi and the SuperTalk app.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life.
Welcome again. It's July 29th, 2026. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. No, I'm not in a witness protection program. It's just not daylight yet, where I joined my friends Bill East and Lucian Smith this morning. A week ago today at 8:59, Lance and I had a deal where we would chit-chat for about 30, maybe 60 seconds at the end of the show, right before he went off to do whatever was next for him, and the same for me. And I said, buddy, I will see you a week from Monday. Headed west with my family. He goes, oh, family trip. Y'all go have a blast. Bring me some of that cool air home from out west when you get back. And that was it. Last words I spoke with Lance Tolbert. And this incredible, sobering reminder that, gosh, we're not guaranteed anything. Lucian, I appreciate you being here all week long and being here this morning. Obviously, your relationship with Lance is one that has grown over the last few years as you have filled in and have been a part of this SuperTalk family yourself.
Yeah, you're talking about the text chain resonated particularly with me, Richard. That was a wonderful tribute in that first segment. Because, yeah, I mean, I didn't have it every day like you did, but whenever it was leading up to me filling in, and then normally the week that followed, it would be the streams of videos, news articles that Lance would send. I think the last communication we had late Monday afternoon, we'd had a discussion towards the end of the show on Monday about, you know, how AI is coming in, what it's going to replace, and was him postulating which businesses were going to be the very first to get wiped out, and me responding to that. And honestly, I plan to have that be what we started with the next day. You know, Lance was he really was such a wonderful, giving person. I mean, you know this, Richard, and I think people who listen probably get a sense of it. You know, when you've got a break on radio, you know, if you've got 3.5 minutes or, 4.5 minutes, whatever it happens to be, you got to get a cup of coffee. If you need to get a bite to eat, go to the bathroom, whatever. I mean, you're super conscious of that. And I had a spell where one of my children had hidden my wallet, so my SuperTalk ID card was nowhere to be found. And I mentioned it on air in one of these segments just to sort of keep things light early. And Lance, I said, I had to call Lance this morning to let me in and all this. And in my mind, it was a pretty good bit. I don't know that anybody listening thought it was. But during the break, Lance went out and found a security guard and got them to issue me a new ID so I wouldn't have that inconvenience the next day. And you think about, that's just a tiny little window of time, and that was what he chose to prioritize, was making things easier for me.
So I had many people listening know that I just had a child, and they had a diaper shower for me up here. So most people bring diapers, right? Not Lance. Lance, well, he did bring some diapers. He gave me a box of Depends because I'm a little bit older, having my first kid, so I figured, I'll probably need those in a few years when I'm watching my girl play softball or something. The other gift he gave me was a cane. And it's actually in my truck right now. I saw it this morning when I was getting out. This beautiful cane that he gave me. I don't know why, but he did.
Richard, I'll say one other thing on that for years, because of this ID thing, which is entirely on me, and I'll say to the management of SuperTalk, we're no longer doing this. But Lance, without me ever saying anything, without me asking, would prop open the back door a couple minutes before the show started to make sure I didn't have trouble getting in case there was another one of these screw-ups with that ID card. But it says something about him that I didn't mention it. I didn't text him the night before and say, hey, bud, I need you to do this. He just knew, Lucian's sometimes kind of a screw-up at 5:58 and may show up not fully prepared to get through that door, and so I'm going to take care of him. And never mentioned it, but it was without fail. Lance took care of that without any sort of prompting. He was just a sort of giving person that he was.
My morning routine is such that I get up between 5 and 5:15, grab a shower, fix coffee, try to grab something to eat, and then sit down, 5 minutes till 6 in the studio and connect and make sure everything's how it's supposed to be. Maybe that makes Houston McDavid a little nervous. He might prefer that it be a little earlier than that there was a little more wiggle room. But on the occasion when I've been in Jackson to do the show from the chair that you're sitting in right now, Lance knew what my morning routine was. And the first time I was down there, I was like, there's nothing open at 5 a.m. right around SuperTalk. Like, I can barely get a cup of coffee. We'll drink the coffee that's there. There's nothing to eat. I don't know. So the next time, exactly. He's like, I got you. I'll pick up breakfast on the way in. And he had donuts and coffee, and I was like, man, you really don't have to do that. He's like, all right, it's all good. I got you. I'll take care of you. And to your point, that was who Lance is. If you happen to just be joining us on Monday evening, Lance Tolbert passed away after doing some yard work at his house. I don't know that there's a whole lot of rumor online. I've seen some different hypotheses about what happened to Lance. I'll just say this, in speaking with some of his family, they are resting easy in the fact that they do not believe that Lance had any struggle whatsoever. It's a very, very difficult time for them because they're shocked, right? I mean, Lance was in a good place and was happy and was enjoying life and was doing the things that he did on a routine basis, and then all of a sudden, he's just gone. Lucian, I feel like I need to apologize to Lance. I am not somebody that welches on a bet. If I lose a bet to you, I want to pay up. Within the first, yes, there is photographic and video evidence that I will pay a bet. As the C Spire text line says, Richard, you still owe him lunch. You're right, I do. Within the first month that he and I were together on the radio, we made a bet about something. And I asked him, Lucian, not too long ago, I was like, hey, do you remember what we bet? He's like, nope. I was like, neither do I. But I know I lost, and the bet was I was going to buy him lunch. Well, schedules, and 22 months later, we still had not sat down together to have lunch with me picking up the ticket. Now, I had offered I was like, let me get you a gift card for lunch wherever your favorite place is and send it to you. Let me Venmo you. He said, nope. He said, this is about fellowship, too. Your butt's going to be in that seat across from me, whether you want to be or not. So, Lance, I had every intention of paying off that bet, buddy. And then on Monday night, unbeknownst to me, after he had passed away, I was thinking about Lance. So we're in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and had dinner. My wife told me I didn't need to tell this story, but when I mentioned it to Ryan last night, he laughed. There are a lot of leather goods stores and a lot of fur places, kind of in and out of western town like Jacksonville or Jackson Hole. I was walking down the street, and the lights were on in the window of a store, and there was a beaver fur bikini on a mannequin. And I felt the need to take a picture of that. And my first thought was, I got to send this picture to Lance. But then as I continued to look, below the mannequin with the beaver fur bikini was a kind of a mid-waist mannequin, no head, no legs, and it was wearing a beaver fur jockstrap. And I looked at Jane and I said, that is Lance's Christmas present. And she's like, shut up. That doesn't make any sense. I was like, you're right. It doesn't make any sense at all, which is why it will be absolutely perfect. And I told Ryan Buckvich that story last night. He goes, Richard, he would have worn it. I said, I did not want to go there, but we did. Gosh, what a loss, guys.
It is, Richard, and I know you're looking at them too. It's really amazing to see all the tributes coming in on the C Spire text line. He was so much a part of we talk about this as being a family, both the people who work here, but also the community of listeners. And it is clear, not surprising, but it's clear they loved Lance.
Yeah. And I think Lucian will share some of those messages. Will as well with you this morning. If you want to send us a message, you can do so on the C Spire text line at 601-879-4395. I'm going to step away. Lucian and Will are going to carry you the rest of the way. Thank you guys for indulging me and letting me be part of this for a little while. To Lance's family and friends, we're thinking about you. We love you, and we are praying for God's grace and His goodness to fill your hearts in this time of loss. We're back with you right after this. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi.
It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no pain.
If you're Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi and the Super Talk app.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard here on Mornings on Super Talk Mississippi. If you're just joining us, some of you have asked this. Richard shared the very sad news in the 6 o'clock hour that our friend and colleague Lance Talbert died peacefully but very unexpectedly Monday evening. Many of you have reached out on the C Spire text line, and if you want to be part of the conversation, you can do so with a text to 601-879-4395. And, you can always tell whenever you're hosting, all of us pay attention to the C Spire text line, both because we want to know what you're thinking, but it also is a real measure of engagement on any topic. Whenever you have a segment, this, Will, where no one's texting in,
something's wrong. You
realize folks may have flipped the channel over to something else.
You're being a bit boring.
And I will say, and this is a real tribute to Lance. I have never seen this volume of messages this quickly.
It's 6:38.
It's exactly first thing in the morning. Even with the governor in the chair, you don't get the sort of response that are here, and I know that he would very much appreciate it. Julie in Walnut says, I thought Perez would be hard to replace. But he didn't replace Lance didn't replace Perez. He made it his own place. He added to many reasons why I love Super Talk. He will be greatly missed. And I think that's so very true. Lots of folks reaching out to pass on their thoughts and condolences to his family and to his friends. A great message here from somebody asking us to hug his dogs. That was certainly something that Lance loved to talk about, and
he would always ask me about my dog.
Yeah,
every time, and in this position, he's up here very early in the morning, and typically would go back into his office. And his office is just to let you know, little inside baseball, is Gallo's old office.
I didn't realize that.
And it's kind of in it's in the deep back, like the very back of our area here in the building. And if you're not looking for it, you can't find it. I mean, I didn't know where Paul Gallo. I didn't think Paul Gallo for the first 3 years I worked here. I didn't think Paul Gallo had an office.
I always assumed this was his office.
No, he has an office, and it is. You have to look for it. And that was Lance took that over. And he would go back there and he would do show prep and work on videos and all this kind of stuff. And so, if I wasn't seeking him out, a lot of mornings I just wouldn't see him. But I always saw him on Friday mornings. And so every Friday he would say, "How's Joey, my dog, who's like a child to me?" And he would, "How's Joey? What's Joey up to?" Because occasionally I'd have to come up here on Saturday and I'd have my dog with me, so I'd have to bring my dog in. And so he loved that. He loved animals, and he always talked about his animals, and he absolutely adored his dog.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And my understanding is Monday afternoon he was throwing the ball after cutting the grass.
Yeah,
and that's something. I tell you the other thing on the C Spire text line with Lance that always impressed me. He would respond to almost every text that came in,
which is a feat.
Yeah.
Lucian. That is a monumental task.
It is, and it showed so much genuine caring, I think, for the people who are listening and responding, because you know this, and I know this. When you're in the booth, it's not like you're just sitting there drinking coffee, putting your feet up, playing on Instagram. I mean, it's a full-time, active thing you are doing. And to layer onto that, swinging around and not just looking for messages that generate content, not just trying to see how the show is going, but to actually sit there and engage in a one-on-one way, it says an awful lot. It says an awful lot about him.
Yeah.
I know he would not want us to make the entire day about him, but I know Lance loved this day in history and the birthdays, but the this day in history in particular I know was one of Lance's favorites. I know mostly because anytime we would when we would finish the birthdays and I would pivot to something else without fail, Lance said, "Oh, no. There were a few things. There were a few things that happened today." So in honor of Lance, I'll make sure we hit a few of those. Today in 1794, the Bethel African Methodist Church of Philadelphia was dedicated. It remains the oldest African-American church in the country that is still in operation. Today in 1890, Vincent van Gogh died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in France.
Was he the one that cut off his ear?
Yeah, I think because yes, but because he had a relationship with another artist, and I think that soured. I also think it was because he consumed mega doses of absinthe, and maybe his brain wasn't perfectly functioning the way that God intended. Which I guess you sort of know. Anytime somebody's cutting their own ear off, I guess you don't have to suggest there were some mental health problems going on there. Today in 1907, Sir Robert Baden-Powell formed the Boy Scouts in England.
All right.
Today in 1954, the Fellowship of the Ring, the first volume of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, was published in London. That's something. We talk about this sometimes these days. You look at it and you go, none of these are particularly interesting, but there's some good stuff. Lance would have been pleased with this. In 1958, President Dwight Eisenhower on this day signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act, which created NASA.
Wow.
In 1975, Gerald Ford became the first American president to visit the site of the Nazi concentration camp Auschwitz in Poland. Today in 1981, I wonder how many listeners were up and listening, or excuse me, watching this when it happened. Today in 1981, Britain's Prince Charles married Lady Diana Spencer at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. The elaborate ceremony was broadcast to eager royal watchers around the world. After conducting the vows, the Archbishop of Canterbury said, "This is the stuff of which fairy tales are made." The couple divorced 15 years later.
He should have finished the book.
Yeah, exactly. It certainly seemed that way.
He turned down Princess Diana for, what's her name?
Camilla Parker Bowles.
Have you ever seen Camilla Parker Bowles?
You know,
Have you ever glanced at her?
I assume
she's a handsome woman.
She must be a great conversationalist. Today in 2014, Barack Obama expanded U.S. penalties targeting key sectors of the Russian economy. We got a few birthdays today as well. It's Wednesday, July 29th. If I can get this to cooperate with me here.
All right, I've got a few for you.
Hit me.
Will Wheaton.
Yeah, Star Trek.
Stand By Me. He's 54. Let's see, who else? Alexandra Paul of Baywatch. Don't remember them. Mike Starr of Goodfellas. I don't remember which actor he was. Let's see, musicians. Geddy Lee of Rush.
There we go.
73. One of the great bands. Martina McBride is 60. That makes me feel old. Here's one for you. Dak Prescott. Dak's 33.
That struck me also. But, you figure his run at the year state was number one was 2014, so 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So the math tracks. Speaking of things that make you feel old.
Yeah. Ken Burns is 73. I tried to watch the American Revolution documentary that he made for PBS because of the American 250 thing.
Right.
You can't watch it.
It's no good, really.
It's so it's like, yeah, there's a battle here and a battle, but let's talk about all the bad stuff that the revolutionaries did. They were terrible people for 30 minutes, and then it's they fought a battle against Britain, and then also they did all these other terrible things.
He's pretty politically progressive, right? Didn't he do a lot of videos for Obama?
Yeah. His baseball series it's still one of my favorites. Now that one, of course, it was early on in his career, and I think he's gotten more to the left and been more vocal about his political feelings as years have gone by. But that baseball series he did called Ken Burns Baseball, if you've never watched it and you enjoy the game of baseball, it is one of the best things you could possibly watch. And I watched it a few years ago, and I forgot how good it was.
He does so many. I mean, his stuff was so good. I hadn't watched one in ages, but I'm kind of like you. I'm not suggesting we can't talk about things in America's history that aren't good, but I'm not interested in watching 12 hours. 90% of it is
of how terrible we
dumping on the history of the country. That's not something I'm interested in. Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard. We'll have more coming up after this.
Good morning from the Venable.
On your radio, on our app, or on your smart speaker. We're always free. SuperTalk Mississippi, your home for Mornings with Richard Cross.
It is time for your Mississippi Lottery update, brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. Powerball winning numbers from Monday were 6, 26, 46, 58, and 65. The double play numbers were 17, 25, 59, 61, and 69. The estimated jackpot is $663 million. That has a cash value of $290 million. Mega Millions, the next estimated jackpot is $50 million. The winning numbers from last night were 34, 48, 49, 59, and 70. Mississippi Match 5, the next estimated jackpot is $310,000. And the winning numbers from last night were 5, 7, 16, 29, and 32. The next drawing for Powerball is tonight. The next drawing for Mega Millions is coming up on Friday. And Mississippi Match 5 has drawings every day at 9:30 p.m. That is your Mississippi Lottery update, brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. Remember, you cannot win if you do not play, but make sure to play responsibly. One person on the C Spire text line here reminds us that it is, more colorfully than I'll say on the air, that today is Western Wednesday, and you know what? You're absolutely right. And Lance loved Western Wednesday. I think I promised him the next time I came on Wednesday that I'd be properly attired for Western Wednesday.
Wear a bolo tie?
Yeah, I didn't. Yes, I think that probably would have been part of it, or like a guayabera, one of those Mexican wedding shirts.
Yeah. I dig the Mexican wear sometimes. The turquoise.
Oh yeah,
you big turquoise guy.
I have. So I bought years ago. My kids were really into the movie Encanto.
Yeah.
And one of the characters in it, Tio Felix, was constantly wearing those like, they're called a guayabera, but it's a short sleeve shirt that buttons down. It's got like 4 pockets, a little bit bigger, clearly very, very comfortable. And I think like the 6th time we'd watched it in 3 weeks, I thought, that looks comfortable. And Tio Felix seems like a generally happy guy. I should get a Tio Felix shirt. And I bought one on Amazon. I mean, the cheapest stuff ever. It was made out of some material that I think in the U.S. is mainly used for commercial plastic, but in some parts of the world,
used for sheathing or something.
Yeah, well, it's not. You cannot buy. But I knew my wife was going to be annoyed at this random purchase, and so I found one on Amazon.
So what's it called? A Tio what?
Well, I call it a Tio Felix shirt, but it's a guayabera, which I'm not going to even try to spell. But I ordered one made out of this plasticky material. And it was still so comfortable to wear that I've since bought several others, and I'll promise you, the next time I'm here for Western Wednesday, we will both have Western music, and I will actually wear one of those shirts. I think Lance would certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, we just talking about Lance. I shared this story with you earlier, but I was sitting in my office one day, and I was dealing with this lady who had a very thick Spanish accent, Mexican accent. I could not understand a word she was saying, and it's a very nice lady, but the accent was so heavy that I couldn't understand it. And Lance was sitting there, and Lance said, "Let me talk to her." I said, and I muted while she was talking. I muted her, and I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I speak Spanish." I said, "What?" He said, "I speak Spanish." I said, "Okay," and I put her on the phone. I said, "I'm going to turn you over to my associate, Lance Tolbert." And Lance started speaking Spanish to her. And it turns out he lived in Mexico for a year.
He really did have.
It's one of those.
Just the most extraordinary career. I mean, just, like we were talking about off the air, almost like that. In almost any scenario, he's like, "Oh, I actually did that for a little while." Or I was, on Monday we had this conversation about him getting, he wouldn't say what agency it was, but about him getting recruited by a national intelligence agency. But, you also could have conversations about, if working in a bar came up, like Richard said earlier, he could pop in and say, "Oh, well, I used to."
Here's how you make a good Mai Tai.
Yeah,
and he would
exactly. That is exactly
of
right. Now he was a real Renaissance man and did a great job. Did a great job here on the show and loved doing it, and obviously was loved by the entire listening audience. Will y'all stick with us? We got more coming up after this. Coming up next is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Some are born and some are dying. It's Alpha and Omega's kingdom come. And the whirlwind is in the thorn tree. The virgins are all trimming their wicks. The whirlwind is in the thorn tree. It's hard for thee to kick against the pricks. In measured 100-weight and penny pound, when the man comes around.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
Where you come first for news. Fast and free. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Country folks can survive. Cause you can't stop a fight and you can't make a run. But when them old boys raised on shotguns, we say great.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for beginning your day with us the best way here on SuperTalk. For those of you who are with us in the 6 o'clock hour, you're already aware of this news and heard the tribute that Richard did. For those of you who are just joining us, I am very sad to report that our friend and colleague Lance Talbert died peacefully but very unexpectedly on Monday. He, as I understand it, spent the afternoon doing some of the things he loves to do, cutting the grass, throwing a ball with his dogs, sat down and never got up again. And so we are all a little bit in shock, remembering Lance this morning. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, with everybody who loved him. And we have enjoyed and are continuing to enjoy the tributes to him that continue to come in on the C Spire text line. You obviously should feel free to contribute to those by sending a text to 601-879-4395. I know whether you spent your mornings in studio with Lance or in your home or car, he was a tremendous piece of this show, a wonderful friend, and an excellent colleague. And he is and will continue to be very, very dearly missed. Well, we've got a good show today. We've got Commissioner Sean Tindell coming in the next segment. He can give us an update a little bit on things going on with DPS generally and with the Nolan Wells investigation that is continuing to grow in national attention. Danielle Morgan, the executive director of the Mississippi Tourism Association, will be coming in at 8:20 to talk a little bit about tourism in the state, summer travel numbers as we get towards the end of the summer. I know for many people we are approaching the beginning of the school year. And it'll be interesting to hear from Danielle a little bit about how the summer travel has been. Well, this hour of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you are not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan that fits you. Call today at 601-206-7966 or go to mwgemployerservices.com. Well, one piece of information I had yesterday that I was just incorrect about, I said that Dr. Fauci would be testifying in front of the Senate on Thursday. He is testifying in front of Rand Paul's committee this morning, starting fairly early. And one of the things that Senator Paul has pointed out, we had a conversation yesterday. Biden issued all these blanket pardons, and Fauci was one of them. And it certainly appears, this is my opinion, but it certainly appears that there may have been moments where his diary suggests that he may have had different private thoughts than what he said to Congress. And so there's a real question about there's not a real question. A lot of people would like to see him prosecuted for lying to Congress, which is a crime. But that blanket pardon that he was granted probably prevents that from happening. Some folks yesterday asked if it was possible to have a state prosecution. My instinct is that there's not, because it's a federal crime to lie to Congress. It's not necessarily a state crime, but I am sure there are going to be some enterprising lawyers in prosecutors' offices who are going to work
the best
hard.
Kind of lawyers,
that's right. On some real theories. But that said, Rand Paul made the point, and he's absolutely right, that if he lies to Congress in this testimony, well, that came after the pardon, and therefore it would be a new crime that he could be prosecuted for. So it's really going to be interesting to see how he approaches it. And I would assume now that he's been pardoned, and I doubt that they will let him off on this, now he can't, I don't think he can invoke the Fifth Amendment not to respond to questions that have to do with things that he said before that pardon was issued. So it's really, a lot of times I feel like congressional testimony like that is not really worth sitting down and watching at length. Maybe you see some clips. This is really one, granted, it's happening on a Wednesday morning, and so most of you who are listening are probably going to a job where you're not going to be able to put C-SPAN on nonstop for the next 8 hours. But this strikes me as the sort of thing that's going to be worth watching and really seeing the interactions that happen, because you're seeing these diaries just make it clear so often that a lot of the things that we were saying, that people were saying publicly, oftentimes Fauci seemed to believe privately, but not actually say, but would say the opposite in public over and over again. So this is some real must-watch stuff that we've got coming out of this.
Some fascinating testimony on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
And this is taking place in the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, which is so Rand Paul leads that committee. So it's going to be his show, essentially.
That's right.
And, of course, he unveiled, as you said earlier, over 1,000 pages of Fauci's personal diary. And, I don't know about you, but it's not fun when you have something you said in a message or, read back to you, and you go, oh, I should have said that. Should have said that. You ever send an email or text to someone and they read it back to you and you go,
yeah.
Oh, what was I thinking? I think there's going to be a lot of that on Capitol Hill today.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. I know we talked about it yesterday, but I just don't understand why my understanding is that he did it on a government computer. It's not that it wasn't even like this got seized, some private diary that he kept next to his bed with a little, pink feather ball on top of it that he wrote it with. I think he was doing this on a government computer. And I'm just floored at the weird personal thoughts in it. Again, I understand. I somewhat understand keeping a diary where you said, I worked on these projects in the morning and I took a walk with my wife at lunchtime, and then in the evening I worked on X, Y, and Z as some sort of way to remember how you spent your time. But these, Mike doesn't like me because I'm cooler than him and stuff like that. Those are just weird. It's just a weird thing for a grown man to reduce to writing, especially when some of it involves actions going on at the absolute highest levels of government that are hugely controversial, where you may or may not have been trying to cover up the fact that you funded the research that caused the COVID pandemic. I mean, I wouldn't have done that. But if, in fact, I had been responsible through NGOs for funding the research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology that caused COVID to kill tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, destroy more economic wealth than just about any calamity in the last quarter century, and then decided to engage in maybe some dishonesty to the government about what I had done. Again, I wouldn't have done any of that, but just for purposes of discussion, if I had done it, I would not have then written down, I'm very worried about these things that I may have done that I'm getting asked about. And I mean, it's just extraordinary that you would journal about what at least arguably was a conspiracy to hide bad things that you'd done. I think the best way to do that would probably be to just keep the thoughts up here, separate and apart from the general weirdness of it all.
And it's one thing if you're just writing this down in your little pink diary, but it's another thing, you're going on national media constantly saying the exact opposite.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, don't tell the truth. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
If you choose to lie, don't document it in writing on a government computer.
And then don't go on national TV and say the exact no, that stuff's happening.
Exactly. That's what makes it so crazy. And it is the reason why when you're able to watch this, if you're able to watch this, whether it's live or later, I think it's going to be well worth it. Y'all stick with us. This is Lucian here with Will. We've got Commissioner Sean Tindell coming up in the next segment.
He's gone country, a new kind of talk. He's gone country. Look at them boots. He's gone country. Oh, back to his roots. He's gone country. He's gone country. Everybody's gone country. Yeah, we've gone country. The whole world's gone country.
From the Venable
Come first for news. Fast and free. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I bet you never heard old Marshall Dillon say, Miss Kitty, have you ever thought of running away? Settling down, would you marry me? If I ask you twice and beg you pretty please. She'd have said yes in a New York minute. They never tied a knot. His heart wasn't in it. He just stole a kiss as he rode away. He never hung his
Welcome back, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank. Ever notice how some places still know your name? At Community Bank, that's how banking works. We're a bank that knows community because we live here. And when you walk in, you're more than an account number. No matter what your banking needs are, here you'll talk to real people who care about your goals. Community Bank, a local bank built on relationships. Stop by your neighborhood location or learn more at communitybank.net. But with us in studio is the Commissioner of Public Safety, Sean Tindell. How are you doing, Commissioner?
Doing well this morning. How you doing, Lucian?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you taking the time to be here.
I'm glad to be here. I hate that our friend Lance isn't going to be here with us this morning.
I couldn't agree more. He would have had some good questions for you. So he's very much missed.
No doubt. You know, I guess we're about the same age. Had an affinity for, I guess, Gen X music and baseball, and always enjoyed catching up with him about both those things.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, how are things at the Department of Public Safety right now?
We're really busy. Of course, it's always busy at the Department of Public Safety with the 11 divisions that we have operating there. This past session, the legislature saw fit to to try to look at different consolidation efforts, and we were included in one of those measures. So we're trying to consolidate our 11 divisions into 4 units, and so we're going to have a uniform division at the Department of Public Safety, which will be the Highway Patrol, Capitol Police, and our CTED units. We'll have a Bureau of Investigations, which will be the Criminal Investigative Bureau, Bureau of Narcotics, Homeland Security, and the Forensics Lab, and the MLED division, which will be our Office of Standards and Training, MLOTA, Public Safety and Planning and Driver Services Bureau, and then our support services function. So, just trying to in government merge pins and do some simple things can be rather large task when you're trying to consolidate some of those backroom stuff that happens at departments. The ultimate goal, though, is to save money on administrative costs, save money on acquisitions and purchases. I'll give you an example. We found where NBN was buying software for $55,000 a year, and NBI was buying the same software for $55,000 a year. So we were all operating in these silos, and now by doing some of this consolidation, we hope to save that money and push it more towards the front lines of public safety.
How has that been received internally? And I ask because when I did some of that work with Governor Barber and Governor Bryant, anytime you tried to consolidate, not just at DPS, anywhere, everybody had their little fiefdom. They had their IT guy. They kind of liked the way it worked, and you start coming in and saying we're going to do it more efficiently. There's this natural resistance, I think, that tends to come from folks.
I think that's correct. And look, there are certainly some challenges. Highway Patrol obviously is a very historic agency and one that's near and dear to everybody's heart. I mean, it was founded in 1938. Along with the Department of Public Safety and our driver services functions. And so it's been around a long time, has a storied history. And so anytime you start tinkering with any of that, there is some internal concerns. But I think the way we've been operating things since 2020 when I got there is we had deputy commissioners that were responsible for various divisions. And so since I got there, the colonel and CTED came over. The colonel was responsible for CTED. The colonel was responsible for MLOTA. He was responsible for the Highway Patrol. And we had the other colonel that was responsible for other functions. So we've kind of been doing that already with that style of leadership. It just really more formalized what we've been doing the last 6 years. So ultimately, at the end of the day, when we tell our folks, look, what we're trying to do, it's hard to get pay raises out of the legislature. I mean, the budget is limited. So many things go to Medicare and things that the money has to go to. And so when you're trying to get pay raises for your individuals, we have to start looking internally, where can we save money so that we can divert those pay raises without asking for a budget increase, but we can get those pay raises to the front line.
How did you get everything you wanted this year in the legislature? Was this consolidation legislation the sole thing, or what? How did that piece of it go?
Well, it actually started off a little bit smaller. It really was just the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation that we were looking at consolidating, but then it kind of grew from there as the discussions went. I've kind of go into the legislative session with a variety of asks every year. We rarely get everything we ask for, but we always get what we need. So we were able to get those things across the finish line. And with my experience in the legislature, I know that you don't always get what you want. Sometimes you got to come back the next year and explain it and do a little bit better job working individuals through it. There's pushbacks against things that you believe are important that would be helpful, and you try to talk to those individuals and move forward. But that was one of the big things on our agenda. We did not get the pay raise that we had sought for our state troopers. We're going to make that effort again next year. We were trying to get the starting salaries up to $60,000. We are the lowest, I think, right now in the country when it comes to salaries for our state troopers. And when you look across the state, you've got a lot of departments that are paying more than we do. I just got word yesterday. We've got a trooper that's been here for 1 year on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. She graduated in the class before. She's leaving to go to Texas and go through their academy where, they're starting
because the money's just that much better.
$85,000, $90,000 plus overtime.
Wow. Separate from salaries, and I have no doubt that salaries are a tremendous piece of that, there's so much, at least at the national level, I don't know that we've got as much of it in Mississippi, disrespect towards licensed law enforcement officers. Does that hurt recruiting in Mississippi at all?
I think it hurts recruiting across the country. And when we talk to young individuals, they just don't want to deal with all the headaches of being a law enforcement officer. And there really is a lot of responsibility. And we think back 20, 30 years ago, the role of a law enforcement officer. And every year we seem to expand it. Nowadays, law enforcement officers have to be, mental health therapists dealing with people that have mental health issues. They got to be, they show up at domestic calls, so they have to be marriage therapists. And then they also have to learn to be constitutional scholars with some of these First Amendment auditors that we have on the side of the road. And I think most law enforcement officers out there just trying to do a good job. I know we have some ones that are bad seeds, just like any profession. And we try to make sure that those are held accountable and get out of there. But it is a lot of pressure on your everyday law enforcement officer to be well-versed in all those different things that can arise. Plus, your life's on the line every day.
Every day.
And if you make a mistake and all of a sudden the national media is coming down on you for what you say or what you do, I think a lot of young people just say it's not worth it.
Some people want to know, if you want to be part of the conversation with the commissioner, send us a text at 601-879-4395. That's C-Spire text line, and you can be part of the discussion. Somebody on the line wants to know why judges got a $10,000 pay raise, but they weren't able to find money for law enforcement, which may be more of a question for the legislature than for the commissioner, but I'll ask you anyhow.
Well, again, I guess it's a pie and it gets split so many ways, and that's kind of what happens. Of course, most law enforcement throughout the state is paid for locally by your local departments. But I always use Cleveland, Mississippi as an example. I had an opportunity to visit all 82 counties last year, met with chiefs and sheriffs across the state. I was really impressed with Cleveland, Mississippi, there in the heart of the Delta, and we know some of the problems that have occurred in the Delta. But the starting salary for a law enforcement officer in Cleveland is $60,000 a year.
Really?
They have over 40 full-time law enforcement officers. When I had visited there, they had not had a homicide in over 18 months. And that just shows you when the commitment is there to public safety and you're willing to recruit and pay quality individuals to be a part of your public safety initiatives, the impact on the communities can't be overstated because neighborhoods are safe, schools are better, and businesses start wanting to come there. So it's a core function of government and something I think we need to really make sure that we're dedicating our resources to if we want to keep Mississippi moving forward.
How are we doing on trooper numbers? I mean, or is it time for another trooper school, or how is that going?
One of the things I'm most proud of under Governor Reeves' administration is that we have been able to do a trooper school each and every year, and the legislature has been committed to that. I think that's been an extreme positive because when you consider the number of retirements that we've had, if we had not had those patrol schools every year, we would be probably below 400. Right now, we've been hovering around 500. I think as some of those, and you got to remember, when we hit the recession, I think we went maybe 10 years with 2 patrol schools. Mm-hmm. We're going to go a period of time where we don't have quite as many retirements, and we'll be able to get those numbers up where I think they need to be closer to 600.
I was going to say, we're still below what's authorized, though,
That's right? 650 is the authorization, and we've been hovering around 500. One of the things I think is unique, what we've been doing last year, we had individuals that went to patrol school that are now assigned to Capitol Police, now assigned to MBN, now assigned to CTED. And so what we're trying to do is create an agency where individuals come through, they go to the patrol school, and they have different opportunities throughout their career to work in the various divisions of our agency. And what I'm really hoping to do is raise the quality of everybody in our agency to get the same training, the same background checks, the same salaries. And if you think about it, we had people that were getting hired at one division that couldn't get on at another division, and then and so we're just trying to unify all that and make sure all our folks have the same training, and we expect the same quality at all the divisions of DPS.
We're coming up on a break here, Commissioner. You got time to stick around for another segment?
Absolutely.
Y'all, we've got Commissioner Sean Tindell of the Mississippi Department of Public Safety with us. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on Super Talk Mississippi. Stick with us for more after this.
Six-shoe, riding my pony on a cattle drive, stealing a young girl's heart, just like Gene and Roy, singing those campfire songs. Oh, I should have been a cowboy. Yeah, I should have been a cowboy. I should have been a cowboy.
From the heart of Mississippi to the halls of Washington, D.C., this is Mornings with Richard Cross, your source for hard-hitting political insight and unfiltered truth. Now, here's more on Super Talk Mississippi.
morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. We have with us in studio the Commissioner of Public Safety, Sean Tindell. If you've got questions or comments, send us a text to the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Commissioner, I, just as an outsider looking in, it seems like you've got one of the best relationships a commissioner has had with the Highway Patrol during their time as commissioner, because there was certainly a time, and I don't know how the culture has shifted over time, but there was a time where it seemed like anybody who wasn't a former redleg was going to get, they would really bristle at that person's leadership as commissioner.
Yeah, and look, I think every commissioner experiences some of that. Even the original commissioner, Colonel Birdsong, of course, he wasn't a red leg because he's the one that kind of kicked the whole thing off.
Right.
I think there's always kind of that's been some of that tension there. But what I do think I've been able to do is sit down with the leadership with Highway Patrol, sit down with the Troopers Association, and those that watch see me going through the Capitol trying to fight for them, to get them more resources, to get them better salaries. And my leadership style has always been one. I kind of get things set in my head, but I'm willing to sit down and listen, and let's talk our way through it and try to figure out the best solution that works for everybody. And I feel like they see that and they appreciate it. I've played softball with the guys down in Troop K. I've visited all the troop districts and tried to get to know them on different levels as well. And look, everywhere I go, I tell folks it's been the honor of my professional career to be the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. I mean, it's something that I didn't seek to do, but I've certainly been proud to do it. And we've tried to advocate for law enforcement, not just at our department, but everywhere across the state. And our press secretary, Bailey Martin, has done a great job of that. Of course, she's about to depart the agency, but if you follow us on social media, she's always putting things up, talking about the good things that law enforcement does. And when we came in 2020, we got to remember there was protests across the country with law enforcement. And so we came in with a mission that we were going to, with social media, define ourselves and not let the national media put down law enforcement in Mississippi. And so we try to highlight the good things that our law enforcement officers do each and every day, not only within the department, but outside of the department as well.
One of the things that I know y'all are at least somewhat involved in, and certainly people are asking about this, is the Nolan Wells situation on the coast. I mean, what role does, I assume, MBI or the State Medical Examiner's Office, I mean, what role does DPS have in what's going on there?
In that particular case, it's being handled by the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, and we've offered assistance. I mean, even the next day before his body was found, I was on the phone with the sheriffs and the chiefs offering the Highway Patrol helicopter and DPS helicopters to get out there and start, searching for his body and any other resources that we might have. But in this particular case, once his body was found, our role has pretty much been limited to that of the State Medical Examiner's Office performing the autopsy. And for those that aren't aware, we also oversee the forensics lab, and part of that is the State Medical Examiner's Office. We have board-certified pathologists, which are doctors that are certified in forensics and pathology, and they conduct those autopsies looking and trying to find the cause and manner of death. And they do that in all suspicious deaths across the state. And so we have an office on the coast. We have an office in Jackson. We're actually tomorrow opening an office in Oxford. So in the first time in our state's history, we'll have a medical examiner's office in North Mississippi as well. But in this particular case, the chief medical examiner for the state, Dr. Stacy Turner, has done that autopsy, and she is a very well respected and renowned pathologist, and has been a great chief medical examiner for the state of Mississippi, and in my estimation, the best we've ever had, because when we came in, we had autopsy reports dating all the way back to 2010 that had not been completed. We had over 2,000 case backlog of autopsy reports. Her and her team at the medical examiner's office have overseen that turnaround to where, that backlog just no longer exists.
There's no longer a backlog there.
No, yeah, we run about 90 days on turning around our cases at the ME's office. So she's done a tremendous job, very well respected, and I'm confident that she's going to do and has done a thorough autopsy and completed her reports in this case, and we'll work with the DA and the sheriff's office on making sure that if they have any additional questions, we respond, and she responds accordingly.
And will that autopsy ultimately be made public?
One of the things that I've been adamant about since getting to the department is once our investigations are complete, we open our files to the public. And like, I'm a big believer in transparency because I believe when you're transparent, you create accountability. And when you have accountability, you earn the trust of the public. So I'm sure in this case, once the DA is completed, those files will be made available, as well as the entirety of the investigative files that Jackson County has done.
And I assume, because this is an active investigation, that's probably the extent that you can talk about it.
That's it. We're not going to get into the facts. And as a former prosecutor, I have a lot of faith that our judicial system is the best in the world, and one where we don't always get it right, but that's certainly the goal. And part of that is not trying individuals in the court of public opinion, but in a court of law. And then in today's world, when we see what's happened with evidence that has gotten out and the way it's been manipulated, transformed, and with AI and these different things, we have to be mindful of what you hear or see might not be the actual recording or video or picture that was originally put out there.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this off the air. To me, that's one of the most frightening things about AI in the next couple of years. I mean, whether the robots ultimately kill us 40 years from now, the ability to take a video or audio and produce something that's very convincing, that's not real, I think we're going to see more and more of. And it's frightening what that could do to communities, I think.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Look, the combination of stupid people, AI, and social media is a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Before you even get to the people who might do it on purpose.
That's right.
So think about your career in public life. I mean, you've served in the Senate, you've been a judge, you were a prosecutor. Do you have a sense of what the future holds for Sean Tindell?
I think we've got some opportunities on the horizon. I've been in a very unique position, being a former prosecutor, starting off my career as an assistant district attorney on the coast. Then going on and being in the legislature, of course, a judge on the Court of Appeals, and now for the last 6 years at the Department of Public Safety. I think I'm uniquely qualified for certain, positions in state government. And should that opportunity come, we will probably move forward with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are you the longest serving commissioner, at least again in recent memory?
I am the third longest serving commissioner in Department of Public Safety history. The longest it was Colonel Birdsong. I think did about 17 years as the first commissioner.
You're not going after the record?
I'm not going after that. The next longest serving was Jim Ingram under Governor Fordyce, who did a full 8 years. The average tenure of a commissioner is right at 3 years. So it is a job that is 24/7. A lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, and folks seem to come in and go in relatively short course.
You've also been, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, you have been the commissioner that's seen the buildup of the Capitol Police, right? Yes,
they came over in 2021 to the Department of Public Safety, and early on I met with Liz Welch, and she said, look, I don't want to run a law enforcement division, and then I met with folks at the Capitol, and we want a safer city of Jackson and Capital City, and I said, well, look, if you send them over here, they're not going to just be a security agency. We're going to make them a full-fledged department, and we're going to enforce the laws. And it was one of the things that, I was really adamant about when they came over is we're going to take the politics out of policing, because I think that was one of the things that held the city of Jackson back. Their officers weren't allowed to pursue criminals. They were told not to enforce certain laws. And I just said, look, if they come here, we're going to enforce the law. If you flee, we're going to chase you. If you break the law, we're going to arrest you. And so we've held to that. And but we've done it in a respectful way. We go out and we have meetings with the community. We, ultimately required by statute to do that. And I think it's a great thing to go out and listen to the concerns of the public, because while we're a state law enforcement agency, we're really more of a local law enforcement. And we need to make sure that we're listening to the people that live in the CCID and addressing their concerns. And look, they know that our folks are there trying to do a good job and make their neighborhoods safe, because we often talk about education. It shouldn't matter what your zip code is to get a quality education, and it shouldn't matter what your zip code is to have access to justice and be able to sit on your front porch and not worry about your grandkids getting shot in your front yard.
And is the relationship with the city of Jackson, is that is that working? Is it better than it once was?
I think with the law enforcement it is. We have done various public safety initiatives, task force involving JPD, Hinds County SO, and the FBI. We did Operation Unified a couple of years ago that had great results getting stolen firearms and modified firearms off our streets. We would work those cases and take them straight to the feds. The Bureau of Narcotics has been heavily involved trying to work within the city of Jackson to knock down a lot of these drugs and gang problems. And if you look at it, one of the most things that I'm proud of is that we don't just talk about it. If you look at the results, homicides are down in the city of Jackson, fatal crashes are down, teenage crashes are down throughout our state. We've just got a lot of things that we can brag on about public safety in Mississippi.
Any final thoughts in the about 20 seconds we got left?
No, I just appreciate everybody. Please stay safe out there. And for all you young teenage drivers, you better go take that driver's ed if you want to get a driver's license.
Amen. Y'all, we've had Sean Tindell, the Commissioner of Public Safety, here with us. This is Lucian Smith on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi.
From the Venable.
The heart of Mississippi to the halls of Washington, D.C. This is Mornings with Richard Cross, your source for hard-hitting political insight and unfiltered truth. Now, here's more on Super Talk Mississippi.
It comes from Mississippi and down in Alabama, creeping like a fever all across the land. From deep in the Delta on the Louisiana shore, the people got to have it. They want to hear some more.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi, presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Always a good discussion with the commissioner. Didn't get a chance to talk to him about driver's licenses. I will say that may be, if he runs for office again, I would talk about how he fixed getting driver's licenses in the state, because that may be one of the biggest successes that I can think of in just general government administration. Have you gotten a driver's license since these systems came into place?
No, and mine is coming up, so I do have to get one soon, but I've heard, and I've had friends and family that have gotten them recently, that it's much easier. It is
extraordinary. I had to get one probably, I don't know, it was late last year, and didn't expect to need it. I probably shouldn't have been driving without a driver's license physically upon me. This is going back to the wallet sagas. But anyway, I had to go get one very quickly, and I thought, this is going to ruin. I mean, this is going to be my whole day. I'm going to go. I'm going to sit there.
Take the day off.
That's all I'm going to do is sit there. And it's now an appointment system. Now, I think you can still walk in, but you get online and you say, I'm going to, it'll show you the availabilities, and you can say, well, I'm going to come in this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and then you show up at 2 o'clock. I mean, you still have to fill out paperwork. You got to deal with somebody and get a picture taken. It's not like it happens instantly, but it's no longer, I mean, it's a true, I'm going to take care of this on my lunch break kind of task, as opposed to I need to take 4 hours off because I have no idea and I need to pick a good book to take with me. And that is a real tribute to his leadership, because that's a huge change in what that experience is like.
The last time I got one, it was a massive headache, and that's been, I don't know, I have to look at it. It's been quite a while ago. Mine's coming up for renewal. In fact, my license is so old, Lucian. I went to the hospital recently with get a checkup with my daughter, and you have to check in, with your license now.
Right.
And I showed them my ID, and they scanned it or tried to scan it, and they said it's too old. And I said, so you're not only telling me that I'm old, that my license is too old. And it's the old style license.
It doesn't have the star on it.
Yeah, it doesn't have the star. It didn't have any of that stuff on it. Yeah, that's how you know you're old, Lucian, is when your license is too old.
I mean, my first license, they literally typed on a typewriter.
Oh, really?
And then laminated. It was the tail end. I mean, this was before the sort of security they have there. I mean, it was truly like you could tell if somebody had a fake ID because the letters were straight. Like if you didn't have like an R that was just a millimeter above the rest from where the typewriter had broken, that son of a gun was made on a printer, and it was sure enough fake. Had to get my CDL renewed 2 weeks ago. I was in Batesville driver's license office for all of 10 minutes. It was amazing. Yeah, I mean it is really it's a game changer. And this was a legislative thing that predates this, but you can get them now for 8 years. It's double the fee. But you know, I feel pretty good that I'm still going to be driving myself 8 years from now. So went ahead and did it. So now you don't have to go back for almost a decade, which is
awesome.
Is a very nice way to do it. Well, if you're an outdoorsman, collector, hunter, fisherman, or just someone who loves finding unique items at a great place, you need to check out this special online event auction. Y&L Auction has gathered all the items from the legendary outdoors store Paul's Mart in the Delta and put it up for an online-only auction. There'll be lots of vintage fishing and hunting gear, outdoor clothing, archery equipment, muzzle loaders, jewelry, shoes, cutlery, signs, toys, lunch boxes, and so much more. This is your chance to find those hard-to-find items you just don't see every day, and you can bid from the comfort of your home. The bidding is going on now through August 3rd, so you better hurry. Start shopping now at yandlauction.com.
You ever been to Paul's Mart?
I have not.
Cleveland?
I have not.
Huge.
It sounds like it. I'm going to check the auction out.
So they got a lot of I looked at it yesterday. I love this. New old stock. So a lot of these stores, you know, if it's a family-owned store, if they have something that's, you know, not perishable, boots or whatever it may be, they put it on the shelf, and it stays on that shelf until it gets sold. And so they have a ton of just older stuff that it's just sat there for years.
Oh, I bet there's some cool stuff.
Yeah, and they're trying to get rid of it.
I will have to check that out. Y'all, this is Lucian Smith here with Will on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. We got more great stuff coming up. Coming up next, though, is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.
The whole place is shaking, there's something going on. It's a hillbilly rock, beating with a drum, playing them guitars like shooting from a gun, keeping up the rhythm, steady as a clock, doing a little thing called a hillbilly rock. Doing a little thing called the hillbilly rock. Doing a little thing called the hillbilly rock.
It's time to get real.
Keeping it real.
It's time for you to get real with it.
And keeping it Mississippi. Your voice for statewide and national politics. Yes! Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Like runway lights, it's kind of like noon in the dead of night. Every light in the house is on, just in case you ever do get tired of being gone. Oh.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard here on Mornings on Super Talk Mississippi. Welcome back for the 8 o'clock hour. Many of you may be aware of this if you were listening in the 6 o'clock hour when Richard gave a very touching tribute as part of passing on some very somber news. But our friend and our colleague Lance Talbert died peacefully but very unexpectedly on Monday. Spent an afternoon doing some of the things that he loved, cutting grass and throwing the ball with his dogs, and sat down and never got up again. I know for many of you, and certainly for all of us, Lance was a major part of how you began the day, how you spent your weekend. Having his voice in your homes and in your cars was a big part of it. He was a great and true friend, a wonderful colleague, and an integral part of this program and others. And he is and will continue to be very dearly missed. Our thoughts and our prayers are with his family and his friends now, And I will say it has been a real joy for me this morning reading so many wonderful tributes that have come in across the C Spire text line. There was one in particular, and if you want to be part of the conversation on this or any other topic, you can send us a text at 601-879-4395. But one listener texted in that every morning her daughter and she would listen, and she would text occasionally. And, you know, one thing that we talked about earlier was Lance was so great at responding to everybody on the C Spire text line. But her daughter would say, "What are you doing?" And she would say, "Well, I'm talking to Lance." And it's so true. And we talked about this earlier, Will. You know, when you're in the booth or when you're up here, there's a lot going on. You know, there are 4 monitors up here. They all serve a purpose. You're working all of them. And the fact that he actually took the time to reply directly to virtually everybody who texted in, certainly everybody he was able to, it says a lot about just who he was, that he would take the time to do that, because he doesn't have to. I mean, there's nothing that's not his job, but he would do it because I think he wanted to engage with people. He appreciated the family that we've got that are part of these programs, and it just speaks to one of many things that speak to what a great person Lance was and how he will be missed. Dr. Fauci is now testifying on Capitol Hill. We've said this is appointment viewing, although I'd recommend watching it after your favorite SuperTalk programs have concluded today. You can
there's that bonus check.
That's right. But he's apparently taken the fifth. As some of the questions have begun.
Wow.
Mose texted in and let us know that news, and Fox is confirming it now. But he apparently took the fifth at some of the questions after giving a opening statement where, if I can borrow Mose's words from the C Spire text line, he doubled down on what a saintly figure he is. So clearly continuing to show that lack of humility. And that, you know, that's the part, I know we talked about some of this yesterday. That's, I think, one of the things. There's plenty that's offensive about how Dr. Fauci handled that whole thing, especially now that we're seeing the diary. But some people took the tack during all of that you have to do this or you're evil, whatever this happens to be, whether it's masking or double masking or getting your booster shots or whatever you had to do. And then you had some people who took a much more humble approach and said, look, we're doing our best. We're learning more. This is what we think you ought to do. And to me, that's one of the reasons that I think Fauci rubbed everybody the wrong way was you kind of knew they couldn't have known everything, right? Like God didn't come off the mountain and say, here's everything you need to do to be righteous with COVID.
Yeah.
But they acted like they were Moses coming down and saying, if you don't put a mask on your 3-year-old, by golly, you're killing everybody. And that was, I think, part of what made it so offensive.
Yeah, and you remember them throwing people off beaches because they were afraid that COVID would spread there.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I remember them spraying down. Kids could not play on playground equipment because they were afraid that if COVID got on some sort of surface, that it would stay there.
Right.
In the sunshine, and it would just live, I guess, and then infect somebody.
Well, you mentioned, you referenced this a second ago. They arrested. There was a great picture of some guy who got arrested in California for paddleboarding by himself out on the ocean.
Yeah,
it was crazy. And as at the same time, Fauci apparently is having dinner parties with Jake Tapper of CNN. About the same time that Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, where they arrested that guy for paddleboarding, was having a dinner party at a $500 or $600 a person restaurant in Napa Valley, and it does kind of show you. And the further away you get from it, the clearer it becomes. And I know there'll be plenty of people who will say that on the C Spire text line that it was clear at the time, but it does become clear that some of this just feels like people wanted to exercise power because power is awesome. Like you can't be that concerned about people dying from going to restaurants if you are going to restaurants. I mean, that is what's so nutty about it. But anyhow, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, maybe there is an argument on why he still needs to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. But if he's been pardoned for what he did, he can't be prosecuted. And I would think
I don't think he wants to answer the question.
I'm sure he doesn't want to answer the questions. I
think his strategy is just let Rand Paul rant. Don't say anything. Don't give them any more ammunition. And at the end of the day, go home.
And I don't think Rand Paul – I'm not convinced that strategy is going to work. I think Rand Paul is like a dog with a bone on this, because it wasn't like there was some new development, right? News didn't break. Rand Paul has generated this news when COVID was not the political controversy of the day. He's brought this back, which makes me think this is going nowhere. And I hope it doesn't. I mean, I think people need to be held accountable, even if there's not the possibility of criminal punishment. If you knew we were making mistakes and you said the opposite publicly, that is something that needs to be made as visible and loud as possible so that it doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah.
Well, Sports Talk Mississippi is headed to the Diamond Youth Baseball World Series on Friday at the Laurel Sportsplex, Highway 84 West in Laurel. There'll be teams from 11 states competing in one of the South's premier youth sporting events. We talked a little bit about this with the commissioner, and Lance and I were talking about it on Monday. But this is the ability, and they're getting so good now to take audio and video and use AI to falsify it. That, to me, there's this question of what's going to happen. Is AI going to wipe out all of our jobs, or the robot's going to wake up one day and your toaster is going to murder you in your sleep? Like, that's an interesting question, but that's not a 26 problem. That's not a 27 problem. What is a 26 and 27 problem is this ability to generate fake videos that are going to enrage people. And the commissioner talked about it in the context of social media and people being stupid, and I think there's going to be plenty of that. But the other thing that is without a doubt going to happen is countries that hate the United States are going to try to stir us up. And we already know that they're doing that. I mean, the Russians, the Iranians, the North Koreans are actively trying to sow division. The Communist Chinese are actively trying to sow division in the U.S. There was a case in Texas, and this has been a decade ago, but that was in a published report from the U.S. government, simultaneously used Facebook to get people to show up for a Second Amendment rally and got people to show up at the Second Amendment rally to have an anti-gun rally. The whole goal being to get two groups of people who have really passionate thoughts showing up together in a common space and maybe having some sort of altercation. And you think about these controversies that have really divided the country over the course of the last decade or so. Imagine if you had somebody generating fake videos. Think about the 2020 election, right?
Oof.
When tensions were so high, and if somebody had released a video where you had Joe Biden say, "Oh, of course, we rigged the elections. We had our Department of Homeland Security created a virus and it went in and it changed all these votes." Or you think about the Charlottesville incident after the 2016 elections, which it sounds like we now know left-wing groups paid for, at least in part. But imagine if after that you'd had the president say, "Oh, absolutely, white supremacists. Those are how we're going to take over this country and abolish elections." Think of the discord that you would have been able to sow. That is some scary stuff.
By the way, Senator Rand Paul just lost it on Fauci's lawyer and had him removed from the room. Security escorted Fauci's lawyer out of the hearing.
Whew. I think we're all going to spend some time on YouTube later. This is Lucian Smith here with Will on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us. We got Danielle Morgan, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Tourism Association, after this break.
From the Venable Glass Truck.
From breaking news to bold opinions, Richard dives into the stories shaping Mississippi and the nation. Now back to Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi, presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Well, we have with us on the line now Danielle Morgan, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Tourism Association. Danielle, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Lucian?
I'm doing great. Appreciate your taking the time to be with us.
Absolutely. I love an opportunity to talk about all the great things happening in tourism.
Summer, I guess summer's officially winding down now with schools. I know some have already started that are on the year-round system, but even the traditional system is about to go back to school. Does that?
Yes, it happens quickly.
Yeah, that's so true. When you're a kid, the summer seems to last forever, but once you're an adult, it's sort of a flash. Do we have a good tourism summer in Mississippi?
I think we have. It's kind of getting to that point where it's almost too hot to be touring.
True.
We always tell international visitors, may not be the best time if you're not used to it. However, Europe's getting some heat waves too, so they might be more used to it.
Well, that's a good point, and they should come to Mississippi because we've got air conditioning.
That is right. I was in Portland, Oregon last week for Destinations International, and it was they were hitting 100 degrees. Now it was a different 100 than a Mississippi 100, but 100 nonetheless. But they're definitely not as equipped as we are.
So tell us, for people who aren't familiar, what does the Mississippi Tourism Association do?
Sure. We're essentially a trade association for the entire tourism industry. So that's destinations, hotels, gaming. We really cover all facets of tourism. So we do a lot of educational work. We put on conferences for educational opportunities. We give scholarships for continuing education. We do a lot of advocacy work, so working on tourism policy, monitoring what's happening at the Capitol, and at the national level, more so at the state. But we dip our toe a little bit into national issues, of course, and then also just sort of being a convener of the overall industry and making sure that they're connected and that we're communicating everything that's happening around the state.
Do you happen to know offhand, what percentage of Mississippi's economy is attributable directly or indirectly to tourism?
Well, I can say that we are the fourth largest industry when it comes to employment. We employ about 136,000 people in the state. So pretty significant driver for Mississippi's economy. We're also growing. I think we have a lot of momentum right now. So it's an exciting time. I think people are starting to understand the connection between economic development and tourism and what creating places people want to visit does for economic development efforts in our communities as well. So it's good for residents and visitors.
How much, are people mostly, how much of our tourism are people from other places versus people from Mississippi who are moving around the state for a weekend or longer?
I would say, we've seen a pretty big increase. Our biggest markets have always been drive markets and kind of the touch states around Mississippi. So, but we're starting to see that change a little bit where people are coming from further. I think that's as tourism becomes a global marketplace, we're marketing in different ways to different areas. Activations like Chicago Blues Festival and things of that nature where we're working to drive people to Mississippi. We're starting to see that expand a little bit, which is a good thing.
Is there a region of the state that gets the most out-of-state visitors, or is it fairly evenly divided?
I think the coast is a huge market. Of course, I would say probably about 40% of tourism in the state is down there on the coast. So tremendous market, so many exciting things happening down there. I was just seeing, in September they're going to be hosting the Hobie 16 international competition, which is huge. It's been hosted in places like Spain, China, Fiji, St. Croix.
Oh, wow.
And now we're going to add Ocean Springs, Mississippi to that list. So people from all over the world who sail Hobie 16s are going to be competing down there in Ocean Springs.
Yeah, I feel like we don't do a good enough job as Mississippians, not the association or the state itself, but we just, a lot of us don't do a good enough job remembering how many great places there are inside the state that you can go visit for a week-long vacation, a long weekend. You know, you don't have to leave the state to see some really great places and have a great fun time.
You really don't, and I think that that's something, if you haven't been to some of these communities in the state, certainly put it on your list. You may not recognize them. We hear that a lot. I had somebody reach out this week about planning a trip to Meridian for the weekend, and, so many of our communities have transformed in the last few years, and I think it's just such an exciting time. A lot of that investment is come from the federal level, but also the state level. They're really recognizing the value of developing our communities, and we all benefit from that. So
absolutely. Well, and it's a quality of life issue for people, both in those individual communities, but also if you're not in a community that's a tourism destination, the fact that you're 90 minutes or 2 hours away from somewhere that's just a phenomenal place to spend a weekend doesn't require you to go to Florida or Georgia, or, you can hop in the car and get to one of these great Mississippi locations. Really, I think is a quality of life issue.
Absolutely, and that really plays into talent attraction and retention, which we talk a lot about in the state. And truly, that's people want a good life, outside of work, and that's really what drives where talent chooses to live. So the more we can provide in the quality of life front, the more we're going to be able to attract a strong workforce.
So I know you love all your children, so I'm not going to ask you to pick a favorite location, but is there if you had to pick somewhere that most people don't think about in the state that's got some real tourism opportunities, is there anything that kind of jumps out to you?
You're right. I do love all my children, and it's hard to pick, but I'll say we're excited about Corinth. We're going to possibly be hosting something there soon. They have a new hotel coming online that is going to allow them to host bigger events. But if you haven't been to that part of the state, there's some really special gems. The holidays are a particularly cool time up there. Picking on the square, all of those fun things. So I think that's a cool destination that people may not think about in the extreme northern part of the state.
I would challenge people when they think about going on a weekend trip to really try to focus on Mississippi and see some of these places that they know exist, but maybe hadn't been in a very long time. Corinth is a great example.
Yeah, we love that. And, our Mississippi tour guide, you can download that or order a paper copy. All the welcome centers have them, but that's a great way to plan your Mississippi adventure. And that's something that we work with Visit Mississippi on, and we're very proud of. So certainly lots of resources out there for planning.
And where can you go? Say that again. Where can you go to get that guide?
You can get that at visitmississippi.org, which is the state tourism website. You can download a digital copy of the guide, or you can request a paper version. Your local tourism office should have them. All the welcome centers have them. A lot of the major attractions throughout the state. So easy to put your hands on one of those.
What about efforts to create a standalone tourism agency for Mississippi? I know that was, I believe, vetoed this year. Is that something that's still a priority?
Yes, it wasn't vetoed. It actually it died in the House just really with political issues. It had passed the House and the Senate the year before. We're certainly that's continuing to be a goal for us. It is when we look at other state models and what's working well, that cabinet level position where that direct line of communication with state leadership has been really valuable and paid off. So it's a model that we think is what's best for Mississippi. If we're going to continue to prioritize tourism for the economic driver it is for our state, that's an $18 billion impact on our state. So the more we prioritize that and the more we focus on that, the more revenue it's going to generate and the more it's going to grow our community. So certainly still a priority. We're going to be talking with lawmakers and hoping that we can continue to get that done.
Any final thoughts, Danielle, in the 20 seconds or so we got left?
Just lots happening. We're going to be in Oxford for our Governor's Conference on Tourism this fall, so check that out at mstourism.com. Lots of exciting workforce things happening, too, so we will be all around the state. We look forward to interacting with you.
Well, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Lucian. Have a great day.
We've had Danielle Morgan, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Tourism Association. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us. We got more great stuff coming up next.
Patriotism is a law.
They were farm kids way down in Dixie, met in high school in the 60s. Everyone knew it was love from the start.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. When it comes to money, trust isn't automatic. It is earned. That's why a community bank does things the old-fashioned way. When you come to us, we take the time to listen to you and discuss any questions you have. Whether you're saving, spending, or planning ahead, you'll find bankers who know the community because they're part of it. Community Bank, banking designed with you in mind. Visit us in person or online at communitybank.net. I'll say this if you want to be part of the conversation ever on this show, you can hit us up at 601-879-4395 with a text to the C Spire text line. There have been so many today because of Lance. I apologize that we have not been able to get to or respond to so many. This has just been an overwhelming outpouring of texts here, and just know we are seeing them. We appreciate them. We appreciate you, and I know Lance would very much have appreciated getting to see all the extraordinarily kind things coming from you. We've been talking the last couple of days about Dr. Fauci. Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, has obtained a copy of the journals that he was keeping, the diary that he was keeping during COVID and before, a lot of which seems to show some real contradictions with what he seemed to believe privately and what he did publicly. And Senator Paul, to his credit, has Dr. Fauci testifying in front of Congress. He's apparently invoked the Fifth Amendment, but he is currently being examined by Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma. So we're gonna bring a little of that audio to you this morning.
Have missed their measles vaccination because of the shutdown. You stated this is terrible and needs to be addressed, since on that basis alone there would be far more excess deaths from measles among children than coronavirus deaths among children. I need to bring this up to the TF, the task force. Did you ever have an opportunity to bring up the potential of measles deaths among children and an infection rate going around the world from measles based on the fact that so many children would not get their measles vaccine because of the shutdown?
I'm sorry, Senator, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
That is your right to do. One of the big issues that's really coming up is on the lab issue. This was greatly discussed about whether this came from a lab or whether this came from nature. There are obvious issues and differences between the two to be able to know this. You had a lot of conversation on this. Scientists around the world were in conversation on this. There were different statements that you even made in your private notes and your public notes on it. In January the 26th of 2020, this is before we had our first tragic death of coronavirus in the United States, you wrote, "It now appears using epi data that the genomic data, the first infection was in early December and was not connected to the market," which was the big rumor that was out there. It was this wet market in China. We know the market was not the source. It was the amplifier. On January the 31st, you wrote about a phone call. You wrote the people on the phone felt the mutations around the furin cleavage site of the spike protein could not have occurred naturally, since it would require an evolutionary jump that they found nowhere in bat isolates. They bring up the possibility this could have been deliberately inserted and either accidentally released or deliberately released by a crazy person in the lab, the former being the most likely. February the 1st, same year, 2020. This is, again, still before our first death. There was not total agreement about the likelihood of deliberate insertion. Ron said he was sure that this could occur naturally, and we should not waste our time and divert our effort to pursue this. This is expected of him, since he was the original gain-of-function person with Yoshi. Also, Christian was with Ron. The rest felt deliberate insertion was possible, and given the fact that Dr. Jingling Shi at the University of Wuhan has been working for years in gain-of-function in coronaviruses to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human ACE2 receptor, we could not let this go. That's a remarkable statement for February the 1st of 2020, when there hadn't even been the first death here, but we knew something was moving. You knew well that something was moving. You identified February the 1st, before any of us had ever heard of the Wuhan lab, not only the Wuhan lab in the conversation, but literally the scientist that you named in your own notes, the lead scientist that was there. It's interesting to me on that, and the questions I was going to ask you was just your background and knowledge about the Wuhan lab and Dr. Shi and all the details. I'm aware of where you have been on trying to be able to plead your Fifth Amendment right, which is your right to be able to do. But I also want to be able to find out some facts to be able to help us for the future on this. The Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in May of 2020 put out a classified document that has only been recently unclassified on this, that had this statement: we assess all the necessary conditions for an accidental release of a laboratory-modified coronavirus, specifically a coronavirus adapted to recognize human cell receptors, were present at the Chinese Wuhan Institute of Virology in mid to late 2019. Now, the question that I had for you is, this is May the 27th of 2020. This is the report that most people will see, is this. I have clearance. I serve on the Intelligence Committee. I've actually read this complete document unredacted. My concern is, were you given the ability to see this document unredacted? Based on your position, were you able to see this and to be able to get this information? I could see it, and I know what's here. Everybody else just has their conclusion at the beginning of it, not this. My question to you was going to be, did you have access? Because it's important for the future that people in your position do have access to this kind of information and insight. Is there any way you could answer that question? Were you able to give access to this data?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You wrote on January the 26th of 2020, we should be allowed to send our CDC epidemiologists to China to work with them so they could see the data firsthand. You also wrote at February 12th, 2020, that you had great concerns about the World Health Organization because it depends greatly on China and, as you stated, often bows to them. Now, this is a really important issue that we've got to resolve for the future. It's not just our cooperation with Chinese scientists, it's our acknowledgement that China covered up their data, wouldn't allow our scientists to be able to come in. They cleaned up the wet market. They cleaned up the other areas. They wouldn't allow you to get access to all the other scientists who are there, including their health records, what happened to them, or even all the sequencing that they had done in advance. For the future of our research and our cooperation with any scientists around the world, I think it's really important that we resolve, if we're going to fund research and cooperate with you, we've got to have certain things from you. If things go sideways, we've got to have access to all information in all places. You were noting not only that China was affecting the World Health Organization and that China was bending them to their will, and so the World Health Organization was putting out data that you saw, at least at that point, as being from a Chinese perspective covering up what was going on, but you also noted we weren't able to get access to all this information. We've got to be able to figure this out for the future, to be able to make sure that research that is done, we have access to all information. If something goes sideways at some point, which clearly it did at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and that being, as was noted by many people, the only lab in the world that was doing research like this that had a lower standard of actually their security standards there than many other labs around the world, yet they were doing this very dangerous research. What can we gain? And what advice could you give us to say in a future setting, we've got to make sure that we actually get information from people and we can be guaranteed that we're going to get that insight? Yes, sir.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I yield back.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to the dark days of the coronavirus.
It doesn't sound like he's going to be giving much in the way of answers here. And Will, you were saying, I think this happened when we were on with Commissioner Tindell, that the Chairman Paul, had kicked his lawyer out. Is that?
That's correct. So apparently, Dr. Fauci's attorney, who was sitting next to him, repeatedly spoke without being recognized. And basically, Rand Paul removed him from the room, had security come over and escort him out.
I'm guessing we're going to get nothing but questions followed by him invoking the Fifth Amendment there. So, y'all, this is Lucian Smith here with Will East on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. We got final thoughts coming up right after this.
From the Venable
with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Roll on highway, roll on along, roll on daddy till you get back home. Roll on family, roll on crew.
Welcome back. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. We've been talking a lot about Dr. Anthony Fauci's testimony in front of Rand Paul's committee in the Senate. More and more is coming out where he may have been putting in his diary one thing while telling the American people something else, and he is being, they're at least attempting to hold him to account on the Hill as we speak, but he is proceeding. Someone asked on the C Spire text line, has he answered even one question yet? I don't believe so. He seems to be just taking the Fifth Amendment. But earlier, there was his attorney apparently spoke out of turn, and Chairman Paul had him removed. And I think Will's got the audio of that interaction.
You're not recognized. You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized. You are not recognized. Security, we'll hold off, but you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table, and we told you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room. This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise. His lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him.
Yes.
All right? But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered. For a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir. Security, please remove him from the room.
Good for Rand Paul. For those of you who are listening and not watching on C-Spire television, he's packing his bags up and being escorted out by, I would guess, the Capitol Police there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Good for the chairman, and good for the chairman of pointing out that they told him this in advance, right? I mean, it wasn't like he showed up, assumed he was going to sit next to his client, and then was told not to after it started. You know, he was told in advance to sit behind him, which is where the lawyers normally sit, and chose not to do it. And now it looks like Fauci is just going to invoke the Fifth Amendment over and over again. Rand Paul's tweeted out while this has been going on that it's his constitutional right, but it's not the right thing to do. I'll be interested to see, and I'll be honest, I just am fortunately not an expert on the law surrounding perjuring yourself to Congress, but
I'd be concerned if you were.
Yeah, no. I'm somewhat proud of the fact that I don't have any expertise there. But I just wonder if he's been pardoned, can he still invoke the Fifth Amendment because he doesn't have criminal liability, at least in the federal system. But maybe that's the argument, that he's got some sort of state liability. But it sounds like all you're going to get out of Fauci today is him getting questions that I suspect, as is typical on Capitol Hill, will have some long speeches before the question and then him invoking his Fifth Amendment right. But I hope that they continue to push, continue to try to get some truth at all of this. But it's going to be an interesting thing to watch as it continues to unfold today.
I wonder if he'll write this in his diary about today.
That's a good question. Dear diary, the people in the Senate were mean to me today. It's because they're jealous I'm a rock star. Signed, Tony. Y'all, thank you for spending these 3 hours with us today. It's always a wonderful way to begin your day, even on a sad day. I think Richard did an excellent job in the 6 o'clock hour of talking about our friend, our colleague, Lance Talbert, who sadly, as many of you know, died peacefully and unexpectedly on Monday evening. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, and he will continue to be missed both as a friend and as a major part of this and so many other shows. Hope you have a great Wednesday, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings. Stick with us for Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.